Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for K&M Tire President, Mr. Ken Langhouse, and four-time IndyCar National Champion, Mr. Mario Andretti.
I feel truly honored to be here with so many great people. You know, we have the best race car driver ever right here. We have the best customers out here. We have the best employees, and we have the best suppliers. I feel truly honored to be here with so many great people. I guess we'll get into it here. Mario, most people know you as an IndyCar driver, but I want to talk to you a little about your stock car and sprint car races. In 1967, I believe Ford Motor Company got you hooked up to race the Daytona 500. You were leading the race, and your teammate was in second place. Tell us a little about the race and that last pit stop.
Sure, but first of all, thank you so much for inviting me for this dealer meeting that you're having. I hope everything's going well. And okay, going back to Daytona, I'm going to tell you, we didn't rehearse this, so I may not have that lucid of memory with some of these things, but I do remember, more than you might think sometimes, and it's good that he brought up this particular situation with when I wanted the 500, because it was at one time pretty much a one-off race for me. Because my activities were in the Indy cars, but I had, as you said, a great relationship with Ford, and I wanted to do some other discipline. So here we are, Daytona. My teammate is Fred Lorenzen, who at the time is considered the golden boy of NASCAR, and the race is winding down. I had, a very competitive car, and pretty much, in fact, I led 118 of the 200 laps of that day. But we're coming down to the finish, and Fred Lorenzen was right on my tail. And especially in those days, the cars drafted really well because they were not as aerodynamic as today. So the car in front was making a big hole in the air. So the point is, if you're leading the last lap, your chances of winning were probably none. And I couldn't shake him, obviously. Lorenzen was, one of the best, and there was about 3 or so laps to go, and we're coming down to a lap. Tiny Lund, who was driving for Richard Petty, was Richard Petty's teammate, and we're coming off of turn 2, and he motioned me to go to the right. He pulled to the center of the track, motioned me to go to the right, and I don't know why I did this, but that's what it really worked. And I just followed, and all of a sudden I just jerked to the left. Never, just full throttle, of course. And this startled Freddie, right? He expected to go to the right, and he backed off. When I came out on the other side, he was this big, and he didn't catch up to me. So here we go. I'm on the race.
Great. Hoosier 100 was a 1-mile dirt oval track at the Indiana State Fairgrounds. In 1966, some people considered A.J. Foyt to be the favorite to win because he won it 4 times before, and he was starting on the pole. Can you tell us about that race?
Well, I think I won that race, and I think I finished second. I was pretty much, that was my second year in USAC in Indy cars. And as you said, AJ was definitely the yardstick at that point. He was at the very pinnacle of his career. He had been there 5 years before so he obviously was well established. So anytime you could win a race with AJ finishing second, it was a hell of a day, I can tell you that. And this was one of them, of course. As I said, he was definitely a favorite, especially on the dirt. I mean, he had George McNaughty, one of the top IndyCar, mechanics, at least strong mechanic, I think engineers at the time. I mean, street smart engineers. combination between George McNaughty and AJ was unbelievable. So even to finish second to him at that time was a hell of a day, you know. So, but yeah, this was a good win for me for sure.
Yeah, well, great. You also won the race and beat A.J. Foyt at the Hoosier 100 in September of '67. A.J. Foyt was said to be a tough, hard-headed, hot-tempered racer that liked to argue. After beating him many times,
Much bigger than me too.
what was your relationship like with A.J. on and off the track?
Funny you should mention that. AJ was a phenomenal competitor and very fiery, you know, as far as his temper. But the one thing that, and I was afraid of him in that respect too, but I could run faster than him. But the one thing that I definitely always respected about him is the fact that he would never lash out on the track. I mean, he was very intelligent, very smart about that, because that would always have some diminishing returns, in my opinion, especially in those days where things were not as safe as they are today. And he was somewhat unique at that level, because some guys, do that. You had to, really be cautious. But again, AJ on the track, you could always trust him, and that he always got my absolute admiration for that. So as far as if we were in a bar or something, and we had an argument, that was a different story. Then I could always use somebody as a buffer, But we had our differences, no question. And it's like I said, in those days there were some ways of expressing your frustration, sometimes very openly, if you will. You didn't have to be as politically correct as you are today, but again, it was fun, and he and I today actually get along better than ever.
Well, great. At one time, you said you wanted to race everything you could get your hands on. You won races in Indy cars, you won races in sprint cars and stock cars. What was the most memorable race in your career?
Well, and any race, any win, is obviously a big star, in your trophy case. But I was born and raised in Italy, and I fell in love with the sport while I was still a young lad there. And Formula One was my first introduction to the sport. And at the time when I was just a young teenager, Alberto Ascari, which was driving for Ferrari, was the current world champion. So that's what captured my imagination. And I saw my very first race in Monza, which was the Italian Grand Prix, which is today still run in Monza, just near Milan. And again, that's really after witnessing the first Grand Prix race, I thought, my mold was cast. There's going to be no plan B in my life. But life was complicated. We came to the States and as immigrants and so forth. But one opportunity after the other, I tried to seize. And the long and the short is, if you can believe this or not, I won and clinched the world championship right in Italy in 1978 in Monza to win the race.
Oh, yeah.
And, that could have, when you talk about your dreams in life, there's no way I could have ever, even dreamt or even thought that anything like this could have happened. So when I look back and, I'm asked this question, which, as I said, I didn't know you were going to ask. This is definitely one of the races that has the most meaning for me, for sure, Monza. So you have to go there.
I haven't been there, but I'm not sure about that.
It's always in September. And weather is good in Italy in September. I recommend it.
Okay. After coming to America, I understand you didn't have a whole lot of money, your family didn't have a whole lot of money coming to America. How did you get your first race car?
You know, we arrived here, this was 1955, I was 15 years of age, and we arrived there like on a Thursday in June 1955, and in Nazareth, Pennsylvania, which is the town where I live today, just north of Philadelphia. And it was a Sunday, a couple of days later, we were at my uncle's house, and I have a twin brother, Aldo, and he and I had both obviously the same dreams, and we hear this big roar in the background at night, Sunday night, and the local track, the fairgrounds, they had stock car races, modified stock car races every Sunday night. So we hear this roar, and we look at each other, booked, you know, and it's about a mile and a half or so down the road, and we're just peeking through the fence and stuff. We see these group cars, and never seen, you know, a dirt track, never seen, you know, the modified stock car, and we look through there, and I think, man, this is amazing, and so close to home, and we looked at each other, we said, you know, it's doable, you know, like when we saw the Grand Prix cars, I mean, it seemed like so far-fetched, I mean, just, but these cars, you know, we said, hey, we want to build one of these. Well, 2 years later, in 1957, we gathered about 3 or 4 buddies, and we saved a few bucks, you know, just working after school and all that. And because we couldn't tell my dad, it was something, it's a long story, you know, I could not talk to him about racing because in those days, I mean, the sport was so dangerous that we were losing so many, and a lot of publicity about the sport was about fatalities, you know, so there's no way that he would have really given us the green light on it. So we had to do it our own. 2 years later, we started building a car, and in those days, you had to be 21 to legally race professionally. So we figured we got 4 years, you know, until we're 21, and plenty of time. Well, the car was finished by the time we were 19. 2 years later, so we said, you know, we're not going to park this thing. We're going to try to figure out a way to race. So we befriended a local newspaper editor, Les Young, and we went to Les Young. We said, Les, we have to do something to our license here. On our birthday, something that looks professional. So he doctored that up, and you know, of course, in those days, no computers, you know, so, and that's it. All of a sudden, we're 21 years of age, and 1959, and we go to the local track with a promoter, and Jerry Freed was the guy, the sweet guy, and we said, you know, Jerry, we come from Italy, and we used to race in Italy. So, you know, we raced there in the Formula Junior, which is all cool, you know. And we made sure we looked like racers. So in those days, most, you know, the drivers didn't really have driving suits, you know, they were pretty much, you know, t-shirts or whatever. So when we show up, each one had a driving suit on with all the zippers all over the place, you know, so we really looked the part. And so we said, well, we need 1 day to practice. And so he gave us 1 day to practice. And we both, Aldo and I both practiced, but we had 1 car, 2 drivers. So there had to be a toss, right, when it comes to race day. And Aldo won the toss, and I was actually glad because I had no idea what to expect. And honestly, I mean, history, Aldo went out. They started last in the heat. And 1 by 1, he won the heat. Oh, yeah. $25. Cash right away. We had $1,000 invested in this, and we had to borrow $500 from the bank, which was co-signed by one guy that we put on as sponsor, the local business guy. Anyway, and then he goes on, starts 29th in the feature, and he won the feature.
Oh yeah, first track.
First, $150. So $175 for a first race, and that went toward bank payments and so forth, obviously. But anyway, it was just amazing that, and I don't take the credit myself, usually when you gather 3-4 guys, there's always we call either the nerd or the scientist, and there was one guy by the name of Charlie Mitchell, great guy, who had, he's the one that gave us ideas of what to do with the car. Not that we were just lucky, we built this Hudson. We built something different than what they were running. In those days, it was very popular to run these 37 floors, cut down rail jobs, which were very flexible. And in NASCAR, actually, when Hudson was officially in NASCAR, they were winning all the short track races on dirt with the Hudsons. It was Herb Thomas, Marshall T, winning all the races. And so we decided to build a Hudson. And the reason for that, Ken, that it was so good at the dirt, was it was the first car, full body car with the unit body construction. So it was very rigid torsionally. And on the dirt, you put a lot of cross weight, and the car really held. So you could push the car right on the outside, and do our passing. So anyway, so we did something that we were guided by somebody that knew a lot more than we did, but we put it to good use. And so again, that was the beginning, and never looked back.
Hudson, yeah, that reminds me of a guy from Delphos, Ohio, we're up from George Place. He drove a Hudson, and that was his first race car, and he's got pictures, and he talks about it all day. So Hudson must have been a good thing back in the days.
Back in the day, it really was.
Yeah, well, great. At Phoenix in 1986, you established the first ever father and son front row IndyCar event with your son Michael, a feat you and Michael accomplished many times. Tell us what it all takes to be that good. And also, I understand you're involved in other businesses, your winery and things like that. What does it take to be that good in so many different things?
Well, I mean, to answer the question of that good, it's all about focusing, on what you love. And when you focus on something like that, obviously, all the energy goes to try to accomplish, your most ambitious goals. For me, to be in the sport that I love so much, and then have my kids, I have 2 boys and a girl, but 2 boys wanting to pursue that as a career, I think there's no greater joy than that for a parent, just like you and your business, or many of the dealers that I visit over the country, some some dealers that are run by families, and at this stage, many are 2nd, 3rd, 4th generation. And this was my family business, so to speak, the racing, and to have your kids pursue it. And it was something that created a lot of pride. It's a double-edged sword, because the sport, there's a danger aspect to it. So you have to talk to my wife about that. But at the same time, as you said, here you got my own son in the business, and I was pretty much at the top of the game. And then talk about Phoenix. I remember this quite well, actually. And he was quickest at the time. It looked like he had pole sewed up. Then I went out there, I beat him to just a fraction, and he was bad, kid, it's not your turn yet. Settle down, and but he was at the point that he was really beginning to come into his own, and he became the biggest thorn on my side. Because this wasn't just as you mentioned, we competed closely, and we finished 1-2, I think, like 8 times in the IndyCar race, and we were on the front row, something like about a dozen times, So that's a dream as a family. But I got to tell you, the very first time that he actually made a competitive pass on me was at Meadowlands Grand Prix in New York. It was, it's a street race that Indy cars had. And I mean, he was behind me, and he was, he really had it together. And this is what used to drive my wife crazy because, we used to just, touch wheels. I mean, in a way of, we were not going to, wreck each other or anything, but we're not giving anything either. So anyway, here he goes, and he's nudging me, and then we come to a hairpin, and he slips inside and kind of booted me out of the way a little bit. And I figured, and then as he goes off into the sunset, I'm thinking, that's my boy. It's kind of one of those things, and I remember also in 1986 we were at it was in Portland, Grand Prix in Portland, and he led the race, and he was a short winner, and I was pretty much of a distant second at the time, so it was about 3 laps to go. And I had settled for second, and actually Alonso was running right behind. And I did the screams on my headset from my engineers. Michael is having some fuel pickup problems. They could tell that his engine was kind of virgin was missing a little bit. And so I stood up on that seat, and I closed right up on him, and as we're coming down for the checker, for the straightaway, it's exactly what happened to him, like a little bit. I beat him by 7/1000ths of a second. You know what that is? It's about 2 inches, at 180 miles an hour. And I have a photo, just we're looking at each other, and it was Father's Day. It's Father's Day in Portland. So, and at the moment, he thought he won, but I thought I figured I won, so, but it was 7/1000ths of a second. So we're on the podium, and he's not very happy. then he realized it was Father's Day, so he said, well, happy Father's Day. So, like I said, there was that competitive spirit between them, because I could have, let it go, I could have said, it's my son, let him win it, he deserved it for sure, but you don't. You let him go. Let him earn it, but it's, it was some great moments, and here's another part, of my career that you could not even design, it just, it happened, and we were teammates actually for about 3 years. When I was team, and again, it was pretty much the end of my career. He was at the top of his, So I think I not because he's my son, but you look at his record in Indy cars. Michael was one of the very best I've ever raced against, and being there toward the end of my career and at the top of his, it was very inspiring to me. I think he just probably got more out of me than I thought that I could even, muster, myself. And so that was even good for my career as well. Just they kept me pretty damn honest. I can tell you that.
Well, great. Yeah, that has to be a great feeling to have your family involved and being so involved with the sport. I know our family, my wife is sitting right up here in the front row. We have 5 children. All 5 children are involved in business. We also have some grandchildren that are now starting working in the business. So very, very happy and very fortunate.
We have something in common.
Yes.
We're in the 3rd generation too, with Marco, grandson, racing. He drives for his dad, Michael.
Yeah.
The Indy cars. So, like I said, here we are.
Yeah. Well, through your racing career, what is your most favorite racetrack, and why is it your favorite racetrack?
Well, here again, when it comes to winning, I could only fall in love with a car, a specific race car, if I won with it, or a racetrack if I won there. there's some racetracks, Ken, that for some reason, you just get in there more times than others. I don't know if it's, sometimes it's not just because you really like that track more. It just felt like I won at Long Beach. You know, I won that 4 times, but with 3 different type of cars. You know, and I don't know why, but it just really worked for me. It was in Trenton, New Jersey. You know, the Indy cars. I won there 6 times. And okay, it's a local track and everything else. And there were 2 configurations. One was mile oval started, and then they extended to 1.5 miles. And it's the only oval ever that we raced on with a right-hand turn. You know that?
No,
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, they at Trenton, they used the radius of the turn 1 and 2. Then to extend it, they went to the right on the back straightaway, and then made a bigger radius for 3 and 4 to lengthen it that extra 1/2 mile. So it became, and they didn't have road racing right away in the Indy cars at that time. And I wanted to get more and more road racing, and I considered this a road course.
Mm-hmm.
And this was a real compromise, as you can imagine, for the cars, because on the oval, you know, you set the car just for left-hand turns. You put, just cross weight in it, you put tilt in it, and this one you had to compromise. And most of them compromising too much. You know, they were too concerned about the right turn, and they were really messing up on the left. And what I did, actually, I left the car the same. And I just, you know, made it go through the right side with, you know, kind of awkward, but I had the most, you know, speed through the other turns, and I won 6 races there, you know, and stuff like that. So that became a very, you know, particular track that I really enjoyed. And then for the super speedways, you know, the super speedways that you consider would be Indianapolis, number 1, 2.5 miles. Then you go to Michigan, 2 miles. Then we had Fontana, you know. And but then in the 70s, Pocono Raceway, 2.5 mile tri-oval. And this wasn't planned, but it's just like a lot of projects, you know, it starts, then it's underfunded, and then it goes broke, and somebody else takes it over. So they kept building this track, you know, like 1/3 of the time, and then they were going broke, and then somebody else comes on. So the way it turned out that there are like 3 turns, primarily each turn has got a different banking and a different radius. And you know what? For a driver, really, it's a special challenge, in my opinion. And it's one of those places where you either love or hate. And that's another one that I really loved the track. And I led so many laps. I only won 500 mile there, but I really loved the track. And it's fairly local for me. It's only about 40 miles, 50 miles from my home. But the Pocono and the Indy cars are back at Pocono again. The Chris NASCAR has been there for a few years. But it was born for Indy cars, and then it wasn't safe enough that he could give it up to snuff, and the Indy cars pulled out, and now we're back, and it's really a great track.
Well, it sounds like a challenging
Tell
track.
you what, I'll give you I drive a 2-seater, you know.
Okay.
Come to Pocono, I'll give you a 2-seater ride.
Okay. I might just be there to take you up on
If
that.
you are on that, I'll give, and that's a darn good ride there. I tell you, it's really a good ride.
Now, everybody heard that, right? If I go there, I get a ride with car.
Get a ride with
All right.
Dana will see that.
Okay, well, great. What would your occupation be if it wasn't for racing?
That's a good question, actually, and I do have an answer for that. I think I would have pursued the career of a fighter pilot.
Oh, yeah.
And actually, that question was posed to me somewhere around the late 90s. ESPN was covering the race, and we were in Cleveland, the Cleveland Grand Prix. And so the question of the day was, what might have been your ultimate career? And I said that. So the following Monday, I get a call from the Pentagon. And here was General Creech, TAC commander, 5 stars, not too many 5-star generals, you know, and so it was his aide called me, says, General, so, you know, Creech is going to be calling you 800. So, okay. And so he comes on, he said, Mario, he says, I was watching the race in Cleveland, he says, and I heard what you said. He said, do you really mean it? I said, absolutely, General. He said, well, he says, I want to show you what you missed. So, and he provided, he said, in your travels, he says, if you're ever close to one of our air bases, he says, and I'll make sure you get on either one of my F-15, F-16 fighters, you know, with the trainer with 2 seats, and we'll take you up. And at that time, well, I had my own airplane, I had a MU-2 Mitsubishi, and then my pilot actually was in the Air Guard. So I said, Jerry, I said, I got a call from General Creech. Well, you should go to detention. You got a call from General Creech. I said, yeah. I said, and I said, anytime I said, do you think, you know where that air base is going to be? He says, I said, let me know. I said, I'll call ahead and I'll get it right. So he said, I know there's one. He says, Norfolk, Virginia. He says they have the 394th Squadron, the Rickenbacker Squadron is based there, the F-15s. And he says, we can go there. We'll go there tomorrow. You know? So I said, okay, then we'll just set it up. And it took me about a week or so, and we called, and that's it. That's where I got. And we went to Norfolk, red carpet and everything, and they took me up. We went, the first ride was over the water, supersonic at 10,000 feet. Then we did a fighter sortie, you know, it was a overcast, well, it was a puffy cloud, overcast day, it was perfect. So, you know, the foe could hide, and then we find each other. And then there was a, you know, aerial fight, you know, with the, oh, it was amazing, just and so I said, you know, I think I could have done this. And since I was fortunate enough that I've been on F-15, F-16, F-111, you know, so that might have, I always said that I didn't have a plan B for my career, but this would have been a good plan B.
Well, that sounds like it would be awful exhilarating, that's for sure. It'd be a big rush to...
I have so much respect. I tell you, you know, I even spoke to Wing Commanders Conference, which I was asked to do down in Florida. There were about 600 fighter pilots, you know, based from all over the world. And I found like immediate camaraderie with these guys, just like if I was among drivers, you know, like if you had put a bunch of, you know, NASCAR and IndyCar Formula 1 drivers together. You know, there's so many things in common, and so you just gravitate right away to conversations. And I had the greatest time with these guys. There's such a high quality of individuals, you know, in our armed forces. And at that level, I mean, the creme de la creme is there lately. You know, we can be so proud of that. And I experienced that. It was a very, very positive experience for me just to have the opportunity to meet these dudes.
Well, great. But I think our time's about up, but Firestone give me this, and they want you to see if this football has as much traction as what the tire does. So.
Oh, gosh.
So with that, I think we turn it back over to Jeff.
Thank you.